In the days of King Hezekiah, the Babylonians were not the major world superpower at the time. The Assyrians were. And God had delivered Jerusalem from the Assyrian army, and he had healed King Hezekiah. Well, word got to the Babylonians of what had happened with Hezekiah. Part of it probably had to do with the sign that God gave to Hezekiah by making the sun back up in the sky and then continue on for the day. Those Babylonians were astrologers. They probably noticed that. And it says that at that time, Isaiah 39:1, Merodach Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present to Hezekiah, for he had heard that he had been sick and was recovered. Hezekiah was glad of them and showed them the house of his precious things, the silver, the gold, the spices, and the precious ointment, and all the house of his armor, and all that was found in his treasures. There was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion, that Hezekiah showed them not. Well, when Isaiah gets word of this, he comes, he says, "Hey, who were these guys? What'd you tell them? What'd you show them?" Hezekiah says, "Oh, they were from Babylon, and I showed them everything." And then said Isaiah to Hezekiah, "Hear the word of the Lord of hosts. Behold, the days come that all that is in thine house, and that which thy fathers have laid up in store unto this day, shall be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord." Now, this is a prophecy concerning the Babylonian exile. Now, it's not going to happen immediately, but it is going to happen. And Isaiah ties it to this visit from these Babylonian envoys from Merodach Baladan at the time of God's healing Hezekiah. And so, as we look at the parallel account to this, another witness of this in 2 Chronicles chapter 32, God gives us a little bit more insight into what was going on. And it says in verse 24, "In those days Hezekiah was sick to the death and prayed unto the Lord, and he spake unto him, and he gave him a sign." Now, we read about that earlier in the book of Isaiah. And as you think about it, when the Assyrian army came against Jerusalem, Hezekiah prayed to the Lord. When the Rabshakeh came and threatened them, he prayed to the Lord and asked for God's help. And God gave him help and delivered the city. When Hezekiah wound up sick, he prayed to the Lord and he asked God for help. And sure enough, God healed him and he gave him a sign. But the Bible says that in that, here's what happened. "But Hezekiah rendered not again according to the benefit done unto him, for his heart was lifted up. Therefore there was wrath upon him and upon Judah and Jerusalem." Wow. So a good and godly king like Hezekiah still has this temptation. He still has this sin in his life, this sin of pride. The Bible said his heart was lifted up. You know, pride is, that's the very first sin of the devil right there. Pride in his heart. The Bible says, "Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall." So sad as we look at a good and godly king like Hezekiah, a man of prayer, a man of faith, a leader, a man who took down all of the high places and destroyed the pagan worship in the land of Israel. And yet, right there in his own heart, there it is. There's that old fleshly pride in his heart. And when God healed him and those envoys came from Babylon, boy, that just lifted old Hezekiah up, and he fell to that pride. And as a result of that, he plays a part in the judgment that God's going to bring on Jerusalem and on Judah of the Babylonians coming, of Nebuchadnezzar coming. I just want to encourage you this morning, as we read about this, we need to realize that pride goeth before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. We need to guard our hearts and be so careful with allowing our heart to be lifted up. The answer, of course, is always to humble ourselves before the mighty hand of God. The next verse, in verse 26 of 2 Chronicles 32, tells us, "Notwithstanding, Hezekiah humbled himself for the pride of his heart, both he and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so the wrath of the Lord came not upon them in the days of Hezekiah." And there's the answer. It's always humility. God bless you. I hope you have a great day.